Based on the movie Starman with Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges, which I previously reviewed, the television series Starman lasted one season, 22 episodes, airing from 1986 to 1987. I'm on episode 16, or rather just finished it. I was going to wait until I had finished the only existing season to do a review. There's a lot of great stuff to say about this show. The great guest stars, Jane Wyatt, a famous actress who played Mr. Spock's mother, also plays the mother of, well, the man whose body Starman duplicated as a different topic. Tim Russ, who would go on to appear on The Next Generation in guest bits, but of course, famously be Mr. Tuvok. And so many others from various eras of Star Trek, various other shows. It was the 80s, and a lot of those shows, you had these character actors show up, but even famous actresses like Jane Wyatt. It's a good show. I'll go into more details later. I wanted to pause with episode 16. It is called Barriers, because it is an outstanding episode so far. It is a perfect example of how to write a story well for television or for movies. This is how science fiction can project ideas into the future and make you ponder them in a way that is removed from immediate emotional necessity. But in Starman's case, it is set in a contemporary setting, dealing with contemporary issues, but does a brilliant job of projecting these out in a way that whatever your political persuasion, whatever's going on right then, it is thought-provoking without Supergirl screaming at your screen for 30 minutes about who you should vote for. And that's essentially all the Arrowverse became and why I stopped watching it. This is an example of how to do a story well. Episode 16, Starman, Barriers. Brief synopsis. It deals with the border between America and Mexico. Starman, who has been traveling with his long-lost son to find his long-lost love somewhere on Earth, gets separated from his son. He's hiding injured in the back of a truck, Southern California. He ends up in Mexico. There he wakes up. He comes to from having hit his head, being stuck in the back of this truck, and has to figure out how to get back. And of course, even in 1986, 87, that is not the easiest thing in the world to do if you've got no official business. Keeping in mind that even though the body he replicated is an American citizen, we have no reason to believe he's got any ID, any sort of things on him, a passport. And because the authorities are looking for this extraterrestrial, he can't exactly go to the embassy or anything like that. So he winds up in Mexico, meets up with a Mexican woman who is pregnant. She can't seem to get a hold of the baby's father. They had met in Mexico in an archaeological dig. He is back in the States. She is of this upper class, intellectual, educated, and wealthy class in Mexico, but even she cannot just easily get to the United States. And so this extraterrestrial and this lady in Mexico hatch a plot to sneak into the United States using one of those smugglers that does that. And in good shady fashion, they end up with an attempted robbery and other dangers before they make it back. This is incredible stuff. This is how you do a good story. Did you see what they did here? They wanted to talk about the idea of borders and the rules, and especially the crisis going on even then at the American southern border. But they did it in this very ingenious way. We get a story about a family that is accidentally separated. Starman is separated from his son. Due to circumstances beyond their control, they are misplaced from one another and end up in different countries. But you see what they did? They were separated on the American side of the border, and he accidentally ends up in the back of a truck that goes to Mexico. They did the role reversal. So the viewer, who is sympathetic, at least hopefully empathetic, with Starman and his son as their protagonists on their show, they see this happen to people that they're emotionally invested in, characters they emotionally support. They see that this happens to them incidentally, against their will. And if they have any negative attitudes about Mexico or the people there, that only makes this seem all the more tragic for them that Starman ends up there. But he encounters people that are completely human. He encounters the lady who is of the upper class and kind of looks down on other people around her. It is her that's given the bad attitude about people that she thinks are beneath her, and it is through her eyes that we get to see their journey together, her accept the humanity of other fellow travelers, and her come around to this new understanding, even as she gets to America, delivers the baby, clearly right, meant to be on American soil, finds the long-lost father. He'd been out of the country on another dig. She gives birth. They all are going to live happily ever after now. She's here, delivered a baby that's going to be a citizen here, and carefully, without some several-part mini-series tragedy about how unjust the law is, our protagonists sneak in a way that everything happens according to the law by the end, except, their comrades that came with them, that question's never dealt with. It does a brilliant job of, if you support borders, you can like this episode. If you think borders are dumb, you can like this episode. If you live in a place, time in the world that you don't think about it, this story is going to make you think about it. It provokes the thought and gives you ideas, things to contemplate, without ever screaming at your screen who you should go vote for this week. And I tell you what, that is, both in fiction, but then especially in science fiction, has got to be the stupidest thing that I have seen develop over my lifetime. I grew up in front of a TV watching Star Trek. I have always loved Star Trek. I have watched Star Trek. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I've had so many people tell me, you're not a Star Trek fan. You were never a Star Trek fan. You don't understand Star Trek because of who you voted for. Now, I want to think about this. So the show that takes place 400 years plus perhaps in the future, about ideals and ambitions of things we might shoot for over a 400-year period. And we are surrounded now with a generation of people who are so ignorant and so childish and have the maturity, the physical, mental, spiritual, whatever maturity of a 12-year-old. They believe everything that one or another political party tells them about good and evil. They literally come to me on social media and say, well, there's 211 countries on earth, and if you don't vote for my particular party for the role of dog catcher in Biloxi, Mississippi, well, then you're a racist and a hate monger and you never understood Star Trek. In the scheme of things, none of that crap matters. Who you're going to vote for in the next election, who you voted for in the last, let me clue you in right now. It has nothing to do with 400 years from now when the Starship Enterprise is traveling through space. The fact that you believe people that told you that who gets elected dog catcher in Biloxi, Mississippi matters that much because of good and evil is just truly pathetic. I need to take a deep breath. I get carried away sometimes. But it is a maturity, mental, physical, spiritual maturity level of a 12-year-old. And these are the people, as other great, much greater commentators than I, like the Critical Drinker, have pointed out, all the modern movies, these new redone versions of franchises and the new garbage coming out, the first reason it all stinks is that it's written by children. It's written by mental and emotional children. And even in the tiny little things, like the complete inconsistency of canon, completely inventing it up. It's bad enough to take something that's been established canon in a franchise for 50 years and just ignore it. But when you can't get through a 2-hour movie without contradicting yourself because your story is driven by what you're supposed to be feeling about different people's roles, you're deconstructing and reconstructing at the instant that you can't even tell a story. Starman, episode 16, Barriers. They make a joke at the very beginning about how Forrester, the guy that our alien looks like, who was kind of a ladies' man, not the right word, but I won't say the word that better describes him. They make a joke about how he used to jump out of a lot of windows to run away from jealous men. By the end of the episode, it comes around that he's speaking with an editor of a small, open-minded, free-thinking newspaper who's hired him to take pictures. And she says, so you've changed. You don't jump out of windows anymore. He's like, no, I don't. And right then, the federal government shows up to pursue him as an alien, and he jumps out the window to escape. This is beautiful. This is an hour-long episode, and the little tidbits they gave you come back around and come together and make sense in a way that you laugh, you recognize it, and this is good writing. And what I can say about Starman before I get to my full review when I'm done with it, that is really the key to the series. It's really good writing. There's nothing particularly, there's a lot of things about it that are sort of, it's kind of like Star Trek, kind of like The Incredible Hulk. It's kind of like some other thing, Kung Fu. And yet, as they go from place to place and encounter things, maybe Highway to Heaven also. But as they encounter things, the writing is well done. The people they meet are compelling. We've seen everything from pimps to gambling addicts to people concerned about technology and the military, and but the spectrum of this, because even though there's nothing about it that stands out as, wow, that's an incredible original concept to set up for a show, but the show is written so well that it ends up being very entertaining and you just want to keep watching it. Anyway, that's the rant so far for today. I had to pause right after the episode and get it out while I was all fired up. So Starman, the series, it is available on Crackle, free with ads. Go find it, watch it, love it. And I will do more about Starman in a couple days or so when I'm done with those last episodes. Peace and long life.